Welcome to Dysregulated. As always, my name is Josh. I am joined by Jeff and Vince. Today, we are talking about how to speak brain and how we dialogue with it, because we finally figured out how to listen.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, we'll hit on a couple of fun stories because this is stuff that when you learn neurofeedback and you do this, what they call foundations of knowledge course, they tell you these essentially they're stories, and it teaches us things about the brain. So this is your neurofeedback 101 course, and really in order to help you to understand a little bit more about why neurofeedback works. And how, like, sitting there and watching a TV screen with a dumb looking cap on your head, why that actually results in significant substantive change. We're going to go back and we're going to, again, tell the stories, talk about a little bit of the history and go over this. And, the first thing we go back to is we talk about this guy that first discovered that the brain is an electrical organ, and this is a guy by the name of Hans Berger, not to be confused with the hamburger I'm looking forward to tonight. But Hans Berger, and here's this dude that and I can't figure out whatever made him want to do this. No. But he grabs his pal and drills a hole through the guy's skull and then puts these electrodes on there and picks up these rhythms. And he's like, wow, see, electricity, really cool. And so, neuroscience is now born and things start moving forward. We know the brain is electrical. Cool. Okay, this is great data. Before that, they didn't really know much about what the brain did. And again, oversimplifying. Absolutely recognize this. I'll probably, you'll get the hate mail that's kind of says, no, there was such a thing.
But you think about the level of commitment it took to make the first moves. You know what I mean? And Jeff, I have to give the man on the couch with me a lot of credit because he's a phenomenal historian and, tells it in a way where I feel like, I'm able to relate to it better than when I take a course like that. But no, seriously. And it's to think that how do we know where to go if we don't know where we came from? And that's why these stories are important.
Yep. Yeah. And it all leads up, right? And then the next thing that we learned from poor old Phineas Gage, who's, left prefrontal orbitofrontal cortex there, and rocks out, blows out that port of his brain. And then all of a sudden we realize, wait a minute, different parts of your brain do different things. Mm-hmm. Okay. Which is all kind of cool. And then comes all this, this quest to figure out what does what. Okay. And that was kind of the initial thinking. And as time went by, they began to realize, we said in the intro, it's not just that one part does something. It's all in the interconnection of the ebb and flow of current, which is dialogue, language. Your brain talks to different parts of itself and brings together all of these complex dynamics in order to process, generate thoughts, perceptions, ideas. Okay, all of these things come from a very complex interaction, which, is a big part of where our field is today. We're talking about things like not just localization of function, but hubs and networks and all this kind of, I digress, but this is a big part of the development of the field is realizing electrical localization of function, ebb and flow of rhythm is a huge thing. And then we kind of had this really interesting exposure of, they came to us, or I should say realization, they came to us from a bunch of cats, right? Barry Sturman's cats. You remember that story?
Yep. What a Barry Sturman.
Right. So you got this guy.
This was when? The 60s?
Yeah, I believe it was back in the 60s. And he was 60s or 70s. And he's doing these experiments on cats. And all of a sudden, here's the first experiment is he again, I don't know what's up with drilling holes in people's skulls, but he drilled them into cats' skulls, okay, and puts an electrode. And they started to figure out that he could train them to generate a very particular rhythm. Called an SMR rhythm, and the cats could on demand do it. And all of a sudden, now we've got this thing that we realize it's called neuromodulation, right?
So not only is it the brain electrical, but when you stimulate it in a certain way,
it's adaptable. And it's changeable. This is the huge discovery that we go, wait a minute. we can actually train the brain to generate different rhythms on demand. Holy cow, this is really, it's trainable. Neuromodulation means that we can implement change in how the brain modulates, regulates its own electrical activity.
And what is that SMR rhythm you said? What does that stand for?
Sensory motor rhythm.
Yep. And what does that do?
It's a really nice, calming, stabilizing kind of a rhythm. We typically activate that in order to stabilize function, put ourselves in an active but peaceful state, which is really nice. Now, the funny thing that came out of that story is he took those cats that he had trained to generate an SMR rhythm, and he puts them in a cage. And a couple of months later, the U.S. Navy comes to him and says, hey, we think that some of our gray paint that we're using on our ships is actually causing seizures in some of the sailors. And so they go, can you test this? So he goes, great, let me grab some cats. Like, poor cats. I mean, I'm such a cat person. I love cats. Like, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's somebody that's out there that's a rat person going, well, at least it wasn't a rat. But anyway, so these poor cats. So now
Justice
they take
for the rats
a whole bunch of cats, and a bunch of them were the ones that had been trained on SMR. They exposed these cats to this toxin, this paint, and they find out that a bunch of the cats have seizures, but some of them don't. And then when they look at it, Barry Sturman looks at it, he goes, wait, whoa, the ones that I trained to do an SMR rhythm are not getting seizures. But the ones that didn't have it got seizures. And it flipped the whole thing. Okay, so they finally did prove that, yeah, we don't want to use this paint. It's not good for the sailors, not good for morale, certainly not good for cats, unless those cats have been trained with SMR. So the moral of the story is make sure that you train all of your sailors in SMR so they can use it. No, that was not what the moral of the story. The moral of the story was, believe it or not, they actually figured out that if you can train a person with seizures to generate SMR, it has the effect of inhibiting seizures. So that's a really cool kind of a story that came home. But again, the big take home from this one was the neuromodulation feature. And from there, we had a number of different brilliant individuals through the 70s, through the 80s that began to use this technology and said, wait a minute. If we can change this rhythm, what happens if we identify a person with excess slow wave activity that has executive functioning problems? What if we train them to decrease that? Will they improve on their executive function? Whoa, they did. And we began to find that there was a correlation between if we can teach the brain to change its own regulation, remember that's the term for neuromodulation, we can actually generate changes in the brain that result in symptom reduction and improvement, right? And a lot of you will have heard of the term neuroplasticity,
Yes.
right? Neuroplasticity is the idea that the brain is not static. It's not this thing that doesn't change. It's actually unbelievably adaptable. I like to say that your brain's neuroplasticity is like a 9-month-old golden retriever. You ever, right?
Yeah.
You see, those things scare me to death. I know that as soon as they see me, they're going to come over and they're going to be snotting all over me and jumping on me. Why? They're because they love to see you. They want to please you. Oh my gosh, they're so excited. And that's your brain. Your brain so wants to engage with the environment, so wants to find patterns and rewards and to get good things and to grow and to explore the environment that it is literally always seeking ways of learning, changing, adapting. And when you repeat stuff like that over and over again, eventually it becomes a literal physiological adaptation that you can see in the formulation of neuronal connections. Okay.
It's similar to the just the concept, to make it really simple, of like riding a bike. You learn to ride a bike, and once you've learned, it's nearly impossible for you to forget. 10 years later, if you haven't touched a bike in 10 years, you're going to pick it back up, and it might take you a second to remember it, but you're going to remember how to ride a bike.
And Vince, have you ever, like, when you were in school, maybe I'm too old at this point. Did you have to say the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yeah.
All right. How long has it been since you've said the Pledge of Allegiance?
Good Lord. Over 20 something years.
Ah, goodness. Do you think you could say it now?
Yeah.
I'm not going to make you do it.
I'll do it. I'll stand at attention.
I
But
pledge allegiance to
to the flag.
There you go.
All right, States of America.
You can take it all the way, you know? It's interesting because when you think about modulation and you think about the word learning, right? Like we're giving the brain the opportunity to do what it was built to do on behalf of the person's benefit whose head it resides in, right? Like we're letting it flex its muscles, so to speak. And going back into Jeff, I literally remember our first conversation ever. Right. I was looking to transition from, the big establishment that I was working at in residential treatment. And I had a conversation with Jeff and he goes, you know what neurofeedback is? And I go, only from the research that I've done before this phone call, but I was very foggy on it. And really, really rapidly, I think we realized that there was so much alignment in the feedback portion, right? Like I've always tried to create loops, positive loops for people, right? So if somebody is facing symptoms of, shortness of breath, high heart rate, sweaty, they're becoming numb in their extremities, right? A lot of times that's going to be associated with anxiety, a panic. Those are bad feelings. Well, because of the context in which we experience them, right? But if I can recreate those feelings through exercise, create a new feedback loop, people can learn to manage those feelings and also see them as more of just, an opportunity to learn from what their body is telling them. When I found out that Jeff was, with neurofeedback doing this on the level of the brain, to me, it was such an amazing alignment and it's just such a great process for change. Our brain is built for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it is.
Yep. And so and that's what I was just going to say is so we're building up right now. We're not talking about this funky system yet that we use to actually change it. The very simple, and I use this in a silly, I tell you, I find neurofeedback to be the most elegant of treatments. And sometimes people laugh at me, like they're like, elegant. That's a really I see this like this beautiful princess, or whatever it is, and this graceful. But I'm telling you, the more I learn about the processes of the brain and the underlying reasons for why this mechanism works, the mechanisms of change, it is literally it's like noble, simple, very, very easy to do. I mean, the technology is intense, and that's why I say it's actually very elegant. And so the principles, right? Your brain is electrical, neuro. Okay, the neuroelectrical frequencies are huge. Neuromodulation, we can change it. We can teach it to change itself. And there's techniques that we can use to do that. And then neuroplasticity means that when we engage it and we make it do this over and over again, we repeat that process, we bring about an enduring and a lasting change, which that's one of the questions people ask us all the time, right? Once I finish training, is it going to stick? The answer is yes. Mm-hmm. In the same way that 20 years later, you still know the Pledge of Allegiance because the repetition is key. So this is kind of some of the underlying stuff. Hopefully my exuberance and my excitement has prevented anybody out there in the audience from really falling asleep at this point. But this is important background stuff.
And speaking of sleep, though, a lot of people, life is busy enough. I'm sure our listeners can agree with that, right? And so a lot of times, like even with talk-based therapy, I'll have clients that have to come after work. They're already exhausted and reliving some super historical elements that are definitely key. It can be difficult. This is a forced opportunity to relax for treatment. Your brain is doing this subconsciously, I think would be the best word. I mean, you could be there watching an episode of The Office, actually belly laughing at Dwight, but your brain is doing a workout behind the scenes, right? That to me is such an amazing separation from what people expect with treatment, which is effort. And sadly, a lot of people will avoid effort when they're already burnt out or exhausted, even if it's on, for their own good. So it's a very unique opportunity.
So here's what I'm thinking. So that people get a really good image, describe when somebody comes in to the Neurofeedback Center and they receive a session of neurofeedback. Walk them through it.
So in technicality, like the actual logistics of a session.
Experience of it. Yeah, so what do you experience as a person when you come in and do neurofeedback as a client? What's going on?
Yeah. So as a client, you're going to come in and shortly thereafter coming in and signing in at the front desk, one of our technicians is going to come out and collect you from the waiting room. You're going to be brought back to a private viewing area. It's like a mini movie theater, all to yourself. You've got a small, little room with a very comfy chair and a nice big TV right in front of you. And you get to pick anything that you've ever thought of watching. Family friendly.
As long as it's
Yeah.
family friendly.
I'm glad. Hey, I'm not trying
It's a
to.
family
Don't
movie,
come
yes.
here looking to watch certain stuff. But
Yeah.
pretty much you get to watch a show for half an hour, right? You're going to engage in 2 separate protocols that are designed individually based on those QEEG results and an entire clinical team meeting to discuss and pretty much conceptualize based on some of that historical information that came from the intake, right? You get to chill, watch your show, and then we give you some paper towel. You get to clean your head off and you leave. I mean, that's the experience. We like to think that interacting with the pleasant people that work here is an added benefit, right? We always have a clinician on the floor, right? Because we do realize that certain things can emerge. Our brains are massively compensatory, as we've been talking about in some of these episodes. And so the process with it does bring some shifts that have people maybe at times more aware of emotions, right? Especially if numbing to emotions has been a part of their brain's way of surviving to this point. So we have support available, we have fun and Jeff's jokes available, and then we also have some time for you to chill out and let your brain do its work.
Yeah. And while your session's going on, so to give you a little image of what what watching the TV show is actually doing. I anticipate that being a question, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the key part? Actually, you know what? Let's start here. What's the feedback loop, right? So it's the actual treatment is called neurofeedback.
Yep.
Neuro pertaining to the mind, and feedback. There's a feedback loop that's informing your brain, and that's how we're having this dialogue with it. What is that like? That circle look like?
And just as an FYI, I hate this term, by the way. I wish that we had a name other than neurofeedback. Like, I don't know, just between you, me, and the fence post, I wish that there was something cooler.
I mean,
but
it's
but it's descriptive.
People listening at home.
Exactly.
No longer between just us.
Yeah, I guess. But anyway, I always hated the term. I wish there was something a little bit more elegant, like the technique itself. I'm in love with my neurofeedback. So anyway, So the question becomes, what is the feedback and what is actually going on? Because believe it or not, the TV show that person gets to pick, utterly irrelevant to the training.
You could watch The Office. You could watch Downton Abbey.
You could
watch Marvel. You could watch.
You could watch a white screen.
Yeah, you could do a white screen.
The big challenge is how do you train a kid for 40 minutes while he's sitting there like with ADHD hyperactivity staring at a white screen? We do much better with SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so here's what's going on. When we create this feedback loop, it is literally, we've got the cap on the head and we're listening to the electrical frequencies of the brain. That information is going to the computer, which is analyzing and evaluating it based upon, as you said, the neuroanalysis. We've programmed the computer specifically to be looking for certain things. All right. Let's say your issue is anxiety. And you've got all these racing thoughts, okay, typically characterized by tons of what we call beta activity in the frontal lobes. You're stuck, right? One of those rigid features we talked about a couple of episodes ago. And you're stuck up there. It's always stuck. It's never not stuck. It doesn't know how to get unstuck, okay? So my computer is looking for little oscillations, little variations in seeing it come down, go up, come down. It's always there. This is the normal level, but it's always up in this area. And it's oscillating. Okay. Every time that goes up and gets a little worse, my computer listens and gives feedback by taking light away from the screen. That's the feedback. And then when it comes down a little bit, boom, goes back on. Good job. Reward. And then it gets a little worse and the computer takes the light away. Okay. And then it gets better, light on. And this is what you're experiencing the whole way. Now we can do this with a couple of different feedbacks. Okay. A couple of different things that are important to really know. Okay. We're tagging into intrinsic. This is just plain how your brain is designed, evolved, whatever you want to say. This is exactly how your brain works. There's some things that it wants and other things it doesn't want. And it's stuff that you don't even have to care about or think about or yourself think that you want. Your brain just wants it, needs it, craves it. What does it want? Light over darkness.
We're a visual species.
Bingo.
Visual creatures. Yeah.
And what do you need in order to see stuff besides eyeballs?
Oh, you saw me.
What do your eyeballs need?
Light.
Yep.
It's how they function.
So if
Taking light.
your brain is going to gather any visual data about its environment. The eyeballs need to receive light. So your brain wants light, not darkness, right? What does it also need? Needs clarity, right? So think about it. How does your brain generate clarity? It focuses your lenses, right? Do you ever think about when you're looking at your hand up close? Do you ever think about, I'm going to focus my lenses?
Yeah.
No.
When I switch back and forth between looking at your face versus Vince's microphone,
automatic
versus the plant that's on the table over there, it's all automatic.
Yep. So your brain figured out at some point in time that there's a correlation between and seeing things clearly. It wants to see things clearly, could care less about whether your lenses are this or this. That's irrelevant. That's a means to an end. So it wants clarity over a lack of clarity, or wants focus, light over darkness. It wants sound over no sound, which is why, right, your ears work if you hear sound. So your brain wants that. And weirdly, it wants higher notes over lower notes. So we'll actually engage any of those 4 criteria as a feedback to provide to the brain. And guess what? Your brain, in the same way that it doesn't care about focusing lenses, your brain doesn't care about the fact that it's got excess beta in the frontal lobes. It just does.
To an end.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Your brain isn't tied to that.
Yeah.
It's just how your brain learns to function.
It's pretty silly when you get down to it. I like to say, ultimately, it's an unbelievably simple system. And again, right, our brains are crazy pattern monsters, right? That like we pattern anything. You're sitting out in the backyard, you're looking up at the clouds, and you go, hey, that cloud looks like a dragon. Why would you say that?
It's not green. It's not, it doesn't have scales.
Right.
It's not shaped like a dragon.
Shaped like a dragon. Because we recognize when you look at a dog and you go, here's a Chihuahua and here's a Doberman Pinscher. Dog. Huh. Yeah. I think an alien coming to the planet may not exactly make the same correlation. Be like, but we know they're dogs. Why? Patterns. Yep. We see facial patterns. We have characteristics, features. We pull these things together. And right, we know through behavioral conditioning, what's the link between patterns and rewards? Yeah. Somebody help me here. Patterns and rewards, right? If we figure out that there's a pattern that gives us something we want, what do we do?
That button.
Right? I always tell folks, right? I go, if they're in my office, people get this all the time and they want me to do it, but I don't. I'm like, if I give you $5 to stand up and sit down, will you do it? Like, yeah, heck yeah. Right? And I go, if I keep holding out a $5 bill, what are you going to do? I'm going to keep standing up and sitting down. I'm like, how long are you going to do it? Till you can't. Yeah. Right?
It's like that challenge that Mr. Beast did. He was like, hey, he went to like the most jacked guy he could find in a gym and he handed him a dumbbell and he said, all right, curl it. And he handed him $1. And he was like, all right, every time you curl it, I'll give you $1. Dude went until he did like 100,000 or something silly.
Yeah. Oh, come on.
He just kept going.
Because, that's crazy.
That's how you
do it.
That's how you do it.
Yeah, it's reward. It's pattern reward. Now, again, this gets back to that whole concept of behavioral conditioning, right? And so that's what we're engaging, right? See how simple, this is why I say it's elegant.
It really is. And when you think back to, the origins of conditioning being taught to people, an explanation, when they say, bring the bell, give the dog food, bring the bell, the dog is going to salivate. And I kind of think it would be helpful to again, kind of package what Jeff just explained to go back to what someone might experience even before they start neurofeedback. We like them to be able to see that workout program. You can look into one of the rooms and see somebody's brain pretty much figuring out how to produce the most clarity, the most light. And you'll see it flicker. You'll see their brain sorted out. So I wanted to ask Jeff, it's pretty rapid, right? How quick does our brain figure out how to do the right movements to get those rewards? It's pretty immediately in the first session.
Yeah, I just say, how long does it take you to figure out that you want to take the $5 and stand up and sit down? It's like almost instantaneous. And that's the crazy thing about it is, again, once the brain can set up a pattern and reward system, instantaneous, engages, and it just starts doing it. It's really quite amazing. Like I said, it's the 9-month-old golden retriever. Your brain just wants to please. It's so excited. It loves this. Your brain thinks it's fun. Your brain is having a ball while you're sitting there just relaxing, watching. So that's what we say is there's your experience which is, man, I get to sit here and watch Star Trek reruns. This is great.
Yeah.
You know, and then the whole time your brain's going, I love this. I love this. Yes, throw the stick again. I love this. You know, now again, keep this in mind. So what we're doing is we're engaging the brain by using pattern reward, okay? And by going for things that pre-consciously, subconsciously, your brain wants, right? Light over darkness, sound over no sound, okay? A lot of people talk about it as operant conditioning. Here's where I might get in trouble in my field, and this is okay. I can handle this one. But I kind of challenge the idea that this is purely an operant conditioning process. It's more than that, right? It's more than reward and pattern and reward kind of a deal. Why? Because once I'm done with neurofeedback, it does not suffer from the problem of extinction. And people go, what the heck is that? Okay, so if I'm handing you that $5 bill and you keep standing up and sitting down, and then all of a sudden I stop handing you $5 bills, but I'm still sitting here, the likelihood is you'll be like,
I just got to check. Do it a couple times.
Just a couple of times. I'm going to sit up
I'll come back tomorrow.
No money? Yeah, exactly. I might come back tomorrow. And eventually, every time you see me, you'll be like, forget it. He's a cheap wad. He's not giving me money anymore. I'm not going to do it. But with neurofeedback, that doesn't happen. Why? And the key of this is go back to, right? So now we're talking about, I'll finish this sentence in a second here. But now you go back to, right, we've just implemented neuromodulation through the pattern reward system, giving the brain what it wants. We've challenged the brain to change its own rhythm. Cool. Now, with repetition over time, we engage neuroplasticity, which neuroplasticity ultimately gets down to the more you repeat or you reinforce neural pathways, the more you strengthen the connections and make them objectively firm, real, and perpetual. So, right, this is where when people say, when you finish up, does it, and all of a sudden, right, when I start experiencing those racing thoughts just start shutting off, where'd they go? And then they go, and after a while, right, after a lot of repetition, it doesn't ever come back. Why? Because we have so fundamentally imprinted it that you never forget. Your brain has learned. So the conditioning process has now turned into a neuroplastic change, an actual formation of neural connections that makes your brain function differently. That's why it lasts.
And what's interesting to think about, sorry, just real quick what's interesting to think about based off of that is that if we had a big spool of yarn that was tied into a nasty knot, I think we would agree that it would take like us picking through it to untie that knot. If someone has developed, hypervigilant, hyperarousal or anxious type symptomology, has that been learned over time? Likely, right? In at least some ways, shapes, or forms, right? So if we're learning a better way, it is almost like following the breadcrumbs home, right? Like it's not, sometimes I feel like if something has taken a decade to establish itself as a problem in someone's life, it's almost like, wow, it can be magical at times to see it halt in an instant. But see, we're not talking instants, we're talking repetitions, and that's why it lasts. That's a big difference. And that's another part of the paradigm shift we've been talking about.
Yeah. And to summarize, sorry, you want to add something?
I was just going to say, because people will all the time, they'll say to me, so how can you tell me that simply watching a TV show with a dimmer screen, how can that make it so that your anxiety goes away? And that's the point at which I go back to Miyagi-Do, right? I saw those that are, shout out Cobra Kai fans and Karate Kids. One of the greatest scenes in all of movie making for me, is where Daniel, who's this young kid that's being beaten up by bullies that know karate, comes across Mr. Miyagi, who's this, master of Miyagi-Do is what they call it. It's his own form. And he's like, you got to teach me how to do this. And so, right, Daniel goes over there, and what does Mr. Miyagi do on day one? Tells him to wax the cars all day. He goes, no, you have to do it this way. Wax on, wax off. Does it all day long. Next day, he's got to paint the fence. Well, what does he do? He has to paint the fence like this. Okay.
I apologize for listeners who aren't watching this, because
There-
I love your hand.
There you go. We got the hand motions going on here, right? And then he's got to sand the deck, and he's got these motions where he's doing circular motions downward, right? And then he gets picked on again by the bullies another day. He comes back. One of my favorite scenes in all of movie making is Daniel yelling at Mr. Miyagi, going, "I came here to learn how to defend myself. I just don't want to get beat up anymore. And all you do is got me doing your chores and all this." And he's like, "Daniel-san, wax on, wax off." Daniel's, "Oh, what are you doing?" "Daniel-san, wax on, wax off." And so Daniel starts doing those round movements with his hands, and Mr. Miyagi throws a punch, and Daniel blocks it, and then goes into the scene where Daniel's like, "Oh, whoa." And so, there's this whole scene where they're going back and he's just doing these 3 different moves and he's blocking everything that Mr. Miyagi's throwing at him, straight at him, uppercut, all these different, the phrases better than I do, but that's where I go. So when somebody asks me the question, and they say, how does watching a dimming TV screen help me to deal with my anxiety? My answer is, how does waxing on and waxing off help to defend you against bullies?
In the movie.
That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
Repetition.
and you would get this. You're a martial arts guy. Anyway,
so to summarize for everybody at home, right? So we assess the brain and we identify the biomarkers, and once we do that, you're able to come in and you're brought in. You have a cap on your head that's reading the electrical activity that your brain's doing. We're not putting anything in. We're just reading what your brain's already emitting. Then that information is sent to our computer, and based on what comes in, whether it's a healthy behavior or not healthy rhythm or whatever it is, your brain or the computer sends a signal to the TV screen to brighten or darken, depending on if it's a good or bad behavior. I think I said that right.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And your brain sees this and responds to it, and the cycle continues. So that's like your crash course on how the feedback loop works.
Yep.
And like they said, repetition is the key. We also, something that people ask all the time, how long does this take? So what we do with our clients is 2 to 3 times a week for between 35 and 45 sessions.
I would say 45 is what I try to get people to. I feel like I get a lot of good outcomes. 35 is kind of a low level where I feel like if I get you to 35, I'll get most of the symptom resolution. It's going to stick. It's not going to get worse. There's a lot of folks that'll go longer. Yep. Frankly, it depends upon severity, coverage, costs, insurance coverage, all that kind of stuff. But
that's the in general spot that most people normally fall into.
Yep.
And I mean, essentially, you're coming in 2 to 3 times a week. It takes about 3-4 months in that case. Again, depending on the person, how often they come in or how many times they can cram in. Yep. That's why we talk a lot about doing like summer programs for kids, because the summertime is a great
3
time.
months.
You got 3 months where, you might have a vacation here or there. That doesn't hurt it. Just you come in 3 times a week over your summer vacation. And a lot of times that is absolutely transformational for these kids in school.
A lot of kids
between
college
semesters, between, even teachers, right? If a teacher has something going on, by the time she gets back to the school year, it's a big resolution a lot of times for them.
Think about why that's possible there, Josh. I mean, you even said it. It's like when we have a session based time frame like that to create these expectations of tangible results, then people can see it fitting into their lifestyle, in more obvious ways. I recall one client that went on FMLA for a course of neurofeedback, and she was able to resolve some serious issues that were interfering with her ability to function at work, right? Jeff, I'm sure you've seen kids come off of ADHD medication inside a summer break.
Oh, yeah.
You think about that. Everybody out there, think about how powerful that is, right? Like, especially if we've had academic issues for years. Yeah.
Crazy.
No stigma, no longer the stigma of saying, as I enter high school, I need to be in the remedial classes, or I can't do it, right? Pull me out. We're already stepping away from that.
Yeah. And we'll start getting into, right, individual applications. As we move forward, we'll be at some point looking at applications to ADHD, applications to trauma. But these are the kinds of things where, we'll have college students that, they had a horrible freshman year. They weren't able to stay focused. They didn't do well. Their GPA was, less than what they wanted it to be, than what they, they're working super hard. We do neurofeedback over the summertime. They go back, and all of a sudden they're calling us up and they're going, I can't believe it. Like, I'm staying on top of my courses. I'm getting things done. I'm able to retain information. That's the kind of stuff that we're looking at. And that's the kind of stuff that we're shooting for. And the beauty of it is we get somebody to the 35, 45, 55-ish kind of range, and it basically sticks.
I think a great example of this, again, not going to name names. We value the privacy of
anonymity
all of our
and
clients.
confidentiality.
One of my favorite cases is, hey, I know he will listen, and I know he will know who he is. One of my favorite cases was a kid. He was, he's in high school, and he had this ongoing problem where he struggled with motivation, right? He couldn't get up off the couch to do his homework, for example, to, get to his sports practice or whatever it is. And the fact that he couldn't motivate himself made him anxious. And the anxiety held him back from getting up off the couch, which only made him more anxious. And it was this vicious cycle. He did training and this was only a month into his training or something. Yeah. Over summer break, the kid who has struggled with motivation his whole life and would backlash if he had stuff going on, he goes up to his mom and dad and he goes, hey, can I clean and epoxy the garage for us? And his parents looked back and forth at each other like,
that's the best money we've ever spent.
And then you think about, same kid goes to his aunt and uncle and goes, hey, he has 3 cousins. The older 2 were out at I think it was youth camp or something. And the youngest one, she's pretty young at this point. She goes, she's kind of struggling. She's kind of bored at home over the summer, no schoolwork. Oh no. And this guy goes to his aunt and uncle and goes, hey, can I take her to the science museum? And again, they're looking back and forth at each other like,
what the heck?
Who is this guy? How is this happening? Yeah. And that's just it goes to show that the applications to this are so wide, right? Yeah. It can help with schoolwork. It can help with motivation. It can help with a lot of times sleep and falling asleep, right? That's something that I'm prone to do is I'll lie awake at night because my brain is just running and I kind of run until I'm just exhausted and crash. Something that I've seen neurofeedback help me with in the time that I've done it is just calming me down, right? Another thing, shout out Alpha Stim, right? Stimulating
Good
my alpha,
point.
another form of neuromodulation.
Yes.
Basically, it's this little alpha rhythm that's put in through my ears, and it just chills you out.
Yeah, I think you just made a nice transition on something that I really wanted to address on this. So this episode has absolutely been a shameless self-promotion of the way that we do neurofeedback. I love how we do it. There's a lot of reasons why I do it this way. But I do need to really be honest about, and I want to recognize the significance of the diverse ways that you can engage neuromodulatory change. Okay. And one of them that Josh is talking about, you can have kind of, in a sense, they're simpler systems that actually generate an electrical current and will stimulate and generate a change in the electrical rhythms. It's more kind of forcing it to do it as opposed to elegantly mirroring and patterning and rewarding it. It's a different way of doing it. And even with the reward systems, there's different approaches to neurofeedback. There's what they call infra-slow stuff. There's other ways that people will engage and use neurofeedback. I'm being a little redundant on that, but there's a lot of different approaches that can be used. And to be honest, we're going to hit a lot of those. Yeah. We'll probably talk more about things like, we're going to be talking about, where do things like pulsed electromagnetic fields fit into this? What is cranial electrostimulation? What's photobiomodulation? These are all like big terms, and we want to make them real. You know what I mean? I want to talk to people about how they can implement them, use them, what the benefits are, and recognize it. But in all fairness, I do want folks to know this is how we do it. I do consider it to be one of the highest, bestest, use another good term, bestest ways. I think it's one of the most advanced ways of addressing change in the central nervous system. Incredibly effective.
And I think that a big thing, again, on that self-promotion, shameless plug, come check us out, visit our website, learn more about us. But I think a lot of what makes us unique is our approach to, right, mental health as a whole, but also the assessment process, right? How many times does a case come across your desk and you're like, you might get 4 initial consults in a day and be like, these are all completely different cases. All of them have ADHD, but they're all completely different. The fact, we use everything from brain mapping and neuroanalysis together. We use a bunch of different tools. It's really amazing to see, proud son moment. I love the system that you guys have created here in individualizing your approach. Yeah. Because people are so unique. That common thread of this show is that people are so unique and they're so individually and wonderfully made that, there's no one size fits all approach. Yeah. And I think if you are going to enter into neurofeedback, you should be aware that there's no such thing as a normal average brain, right? Don't just train people towards a norm. Train people towards what their brain wants to be doing and what it's good at, help it be better. We talk about doing neurofeedback with like a baseball team and seeing if we could we firmly believe.
Yeah, I think neurofeedback. Yep, I think neurofeedback on a professional baseball team would be more effective than Moneyball. Yeah. If you ever saw that movie, I just throw that out there. If there's a professional baseball team that wants to take me up on that, I'll charge you. But I would love that.
Combat sports. Yeah. I'm over here thinking in terms of the adversity that's faced when you are locked in a cage with another person. I also think to times where I've had coaches say like, you're unexcitable, meaning that like I just learned to not be excited in those settings. And it became problematic. It was something to work towards, and then it became problematic. I see so much performance enhancement ability in neurofeedback that it could be applied to work settings, sports endeavors, academic settings, you name it.
Yeah. And I would want to invite our listeners, right? We're kind of wrapping up our first 4 episodes that are kind of laying the groundwork. But as we go forward, we're going to hit on a lot of different topics. We're going to try to cover a whole lot of different angles. If there's something that you would be interested in learning more about, don't hesitate to reach out and say, hey, can you guys talk about this? We're going to hit on a lot of stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anywhere from performance enhancement kinds of approaches, different forms of neuromodulation. How do I find a good neurofeedback provider? How do I know if something is called a neurofeedback device, whether it's junk or it's good? Trust me when I tell, I'm absolutely going to hit that one at some point because I'm a little bit, I get a little worked up when I see these one-hit wonders coming out saying that they're neurofeedback and not professional grade. Man, it gives us a bad name.
And if you're a professional out there, turns out I know a guy who wrote a book. It should be out on Amazon by the time this goes live.
Oh, by this time? Yep.
Almost certainly.
It's out now.
Oh, perfect. There we go. It's out now.
Absolutely out now.
So check it out. It's called
Launching Your Career in Neurofeedback.
We'll have a copy.
We will have it out. Yep.
But it covers soup to nuts, what you need to know to be a successful clinician, how to conquer, the costs, how to, get a good system, good software, all these different things brings you in. So if you're interested in that, peep the book, I'll have a link, since it'll be out. I'll have a link in the description of YouTube, Spotify, whatever.
Yep.
If you want to check it out,
grab it on Amazon.
Yep, grab it on Amazon.
Easy to find. It's a good one if you're considering going into the field. If you want to know what it means to switch into that paradigm, what it is that it's going to take in order to become a clinician. And my focus on this is professional grade. I want to make sure that people that do this at the highest level, and that it is something that is directly related to their training and their expertise as a mental health or a medical professional. Yeah. So this is the definitive guide, I would suggest. No other book out there that's like it. So
amazing.
Yay.
Well, do you guys have any closing thoughts? Vince, Jeff?
To me, this has been a pleasure. Also, ongoing, like I had said in an earlier episode, we're looking to connect with other professionals and connect dots, right? Yeah. Like we want to be like a catalyst to positive change for the people that you work with, that we work with, that none of us have worked with yet. So we always want to keep it relatable, and we want to touch on anything that is relevant, right, to mental health and the betterment of our clients. So.
Amazing. Well, with that, thank you guys again for listening, watching. Again, if you could drop us a like, comment, ask us a question, anything that you can do to engage with us is much appreciated, and it helps us out a lot. So until next time, you guys have a blessed time. Thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you all in the next one.